ॐ नमः श्रीयतिराजाय विवेकानन्दसूरये सच्चित्सुखस्वरूपाय स्वामिने तापहारिणे. So today we will read Inspired Talks of Swami Vivekananda, page number 52, date June 25th, Tuesday. I will read the quote, particular passage, and I will explain the meaning of the passage. Swami Vivekananda, he says, after every happiness comes misery. They may be far apart or near. So this is the quote. Again I will read it. After every happiness comes misery. So this is the main statement we are going to discuss in this particular class. That is, after every happiness comes misery. So if we take the human life in general, we have been subjected to the constant play of the gunas. So this is a very important concept in spiritual life that we have to understand. The concept of gunas. The concept of the play of gunas in our life. So according to the Sankhya philosophy, there are three gunas, which are sattva, rajas and tamas. So these three gunas, they determine our characteristic. The composition of these gunas determine who we are. So first I will explain what are the three gunas. So the three gunas, as I mentioned earlier, are sattva, rajas and tamas. Sattva guna is the state that comes out of calmness, or the state of calmness, and the state can be determined by the bliss that we feel. So see, on many occasions, naturally there is a natural disposition in the human mind on certain occasions. For example, during sunrise or sunset, when we open ourselves to this beautiful environment, we feel a kind of inner peace or inner bliss on occasions. And again, there are certain occasions where we feel the innate purity which is present in us. So that triggers the state of bliss. So this state, the state of sattva, can be explained as the state of innate purity or innate bliss that exists within ourselves. So on many occasions they get triggered, just like when you see a beautiful view of sunrise or sunset, or certain occasions when you are alone, or certain occasions when you feel yourself that you are pure, or when you are free. So on these occasions, we can certainly experience the state of sattva. Or even on certain occasions when we go to temples, when we are in a deep state of prayer or meditation, we can feel or we can experience the state of sattva. So traditionally, sattva is explained as a state of lightness, as a state of illumination. This is the traditional explanation. Next, we come to rajas. So rajas is explained as the propensity of the human mind to determine the nature of the object, or the propensity of the human mind to experience an object which is outside within oneself. For example, I see an object which is an object X. So my mind determines the nature of the object by experiencing the object. and we get the result of that experience also. So in short, if you want to explain this particular state of rajas, it can be stated as the experience of an external object. So the experience of an external object, it determines the rajas, or can be said as rajas. So there is an outward movement of energy from within oneself. We determine an object and we experience an object, and the outcome of the experience may be pleasure or pain. So on many occasions there may be pleasure in the beginning and it may end up in pain. So this is the quality of rajas. And the third quality is the quality of tamas. So tamas, traditionally it is explained as a state of darkness, as a state of stupidity, as a state of laziness, we can say. A totally dark state where it can be equated with the state of the animals. Suppose if we examine the state of animals which we see around in our everyday lives, we can find that most of the time the animals, they engage in themselves in the tamoguna. So these are the three gunas, or the three gunas which are in operation in our human life. See, the understanding of human gunas is very important because it determines who we are, and the refinement of the gunas is very important when we practice spiritual sadhana, when we practice our spiritual life. So we are discussing this particular statement of Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda says that after every happiness comes misery. So this is a particular quotation which we are focusing on this present class, and this particular statement can only be explained in the context of the three gunas. So the three gunas, again I repeat, are sattva, rajas and tamas. So sattva is a state of purity or a state of illumination or a state of bliss that we experience naturally on certain occasions. The state of rajas is the experiencing of the external object and its outcomes. And tamas is a state of darkness which is found in animals. So in each individual, the composition of the gunas vary. For example, in a certain individual, sattva guna, the composition of sattva guna may be high when compared to rajoguna and tamoguna. And again, in certain individuals, the rajoguna may be more predominant when compared to sattva guna and tamoguna. And again, in certain individuals, we find that tamoguna is more predominant when compared to sattva guna and rajoguna. So the composition varies. So that is the reason we find a variation from people to people, and even from man and animals, even from people and from animals. So the differences largely is due to the composition of the gunas. So in each individual, the three gunas, they vary in composition, and so depending on the predominant nature of the gunas present in an individual, the particular characteristic of an individual again is influenced by three gunas. See, for example, each individual, we have our own unique characteristics, we have our unique habits which we have formed in the course of our lives. So all these characteristics, all these habits is determined by the composition of the gunas that exist in us. For example, if sattva guna is more predominant, we will be strong and we will be able to handle pleasure and pain equally in life. And again, there is a propensity towards, there will be a natural inclination of the mind towards a state of calmness, towards a state of strength, and again towards a state which is unaffected by anything that it is thrown upon us. For example, there are certain situations in life where you're challenged constantly, where you're challenged by pleasure, where you're challenged by pain, where you're challenged by happiness, where you're challenged by misery. The capacity to take all these challenges with an unaffected, in a state which is unaffected, is a state of sattva again. So many times we do not know how to handle these states. For example, if we feel happiness, we do not know how to handle the happiness. And again, if we feel miserable, we equally do not know, we are equally in dark about how to handle this particular situation. And therefore, we again keep searching answers outside that we eventually don't get it. So, the best way to manage, or the best way to manage all these experiences is to remain unaffected by it. So that we come a little later, how to manage these states. So the first thing is that we have to understand that the gunas are in operation in us. So there are three gunas which are in operation in every one of us. The state of sattva, and the state of rajas, and the state of tamas. And these gunas, they determine our habits. These gunas, they determine our individual characteristics. So these gunas determine even, so that is the reason we find the difference between a person to person. That is the reason we find the difference between a man and the animal. So the whole concept of our, the practice of spirituality or spiritual life is to increase the propensity of the sattva guna, is to bring out more of this sattvic nature which is within us. So all the spiritual practice that we take up in our lives, they prolong the nature of the sattva guna. Because according to this Sankhya philosophy or according to Vedanta, they say that only the state of sattva can lead to jnana. So why we have to bother more about the sattva guna, or why we should increase the propensity of the sattva guna is that, so according to this Sankhya philosophy, it says that only the sattva guna can lead to jnana. And through jnana, a person, he achieves complete freedom. So only jnana can give the discriminative knowledge that I am this pure Purusha, that I am this pure Atman, that I am completely different from the system which I am into. That is, I am this pure Purusha which is different from this Ahankara. See, Ahankara, Buddhi, Manas, Karmendriyas, Jnanendriyas, etc., all these things are connected with the body. So this sattva guna, it leads to the identification with the pure Purusha which we actually are. Whereas the rest of the gunas, that is Rajas and Tamas, they tend to identify more with the body, actually, more with the Prakriti, we can say. So therefore, the identification which leads us towards freedom, or the identification which leads us towards this pure Purusha, is but sattva guna only. And that is the reason we as a humankind, or we together as a society, have to strive towards this particular state whereby we achieve this illumination, whereby we achieve this total freedom. See, the nature of the human configuration, or the nature of the human life in itself, is towards freedom only. And therefore, as a individual entity or as a collective entity, we as an individual, or we together as a society, as a collective beings, we are all progressing towards this particular state wherein we achieve complete freedom, actually. So therefore, there is a need for us to enhance this nature of the nature of sattva within us. And regarding this, Sri Ramakrishna gives a beautiful story about it, about the three gunas. Very interesting story. The story is very simple and very illuminating. So the story goes like this. So it is a story of three robbers. So there are three highwaymen or three robbers. These three robbers, they trap a person who wanders on a particular road. So they trap this person, and these robbers have a discussion among themselves of what to do with this person. So the person is completely robbed in the first place. After robbing, what to do with him? So that is the point they are analyzing, these three people, these three robbers. The first robber who says that let us kill him. What is the use of keeping him alive? If we keep this person alive, he will go and inform the village, and in turn we will get trapped by this information. So they have decided to kill him. But again, the second person, he intervenes and he says that no, let us not kill him because we did not have unnecessary bloodshed here. He says that let us bind him. Let us tie some ropes around him. Let us bind him, and then we will leave him in this place, and then we shall leave this particular spot, he says. And again the third person, he intervenes. He says that no, let us leave him, let us set him free, and let him escape with his life. And so the last person who says that let us set him free, he shows the direction for that person. He shows the direction wherein with which he can escape from this particular location. So the three robbers mentioned here are it can be equated with the Tamoguna, Rajoguna and Sattoguna. So then the nature of the Tamoguna is, as the robbers said, let us kill him, let us put him out of life. So the nature of the Tamoguna is of this sort. That means it tends to finish off the life, or it is a state of darkness actually. In simple way, if you want to explain it, it is a state of darkness. And the state of Rajas is the thing that binds you down. Just like a robber who gave the idea that let us bind this particular person. Similarly, the state of Rajas is a state that keeps us in a state of bondage. So this is very important. The state of Rajas and the Tamoguna, the state of Tamas, they keep a person in bondage. Whereas only the Sattvaguna, just like the last final robber who said, let us set this person free. This Sattvaguna can only free us, can show us the direction. This is the way to freedom. So just like the robber, he showed the person the way to freedom. Similarly, Sattvaguna, it shows the way wherein we can liberate ourselves, wherein we can liberate ourselves from the clutches of Prakriti. So wherein we can liberate ourselves from all duality around us. So a man will be completely free from all the states which he is in, and finally he tastes this freedom. The reason we are experiencing the world, and the reason we are having all this duality in our life, and the reason we are constantly bombarded by all our experiences in life is to achieve the state of freedom finally. Is to make ourselves more mature, is to make ourselves more sattvic, and finally we reach a state of freedom. So in this particular quotation, I will read the quote again. So after every happiness comes misery. So this particular the states, alternating states, that is happiness and misery, excitement and disappointment. There are many situations in life where we get excited inordinately, and then all of a sudden when there is a slight obstacle, we find ourselves in depression. On one moment we found ourselves excited, and on the next moment when a slightest obstacle comes to our life, and then we feel disappointed. So these states can be together called as a duality. So duality is everywhere. For example, heat and cold that we experience in life. For example, the weather a couple of weeks ago, it was very hot and it was very humid. And suddenly if you go outside, you find it is about to rain now. So there is a state of duality which exists in life. So we have to discern that, we have to acknowledge these states, that they exist. And the goal of spiritual life is to remain unaffected by these states, or to transcend these states, is to transcend the duality. So that is the challenge we face in our everyday life. Most of the time we do not know how to handle these challenges. When happiness comes, we get excited. When misery comes, we become downhearted. So we are constantly plagued by the gunas. We do not know what to do on many occasions. And we become confused and we let go of that particular situation, and there is no process to recover. There is no spiritual process wherein we can set in to recover from those particular states. And herein comes the employment of all the spiritual practices. So the employment of the spiritual practice is to set in a process wherein we can handle these states, wherein we can handle the state of duality. So we set in a particular spiritual process in life where we can handle the duality in a better way, and wherein we remain in a state which is unaffected by these two, by the duality. So the point here is that in our everyday life, when we are bombarded by this constant happiness and misery, when we are bombarded by these things, let us remain unaffected by it. So do not consciously join with those particular states, because those states are temporary in nature. So happiness lasts only for a moment, it doesn't last forever. And again misery, it lasts only for a particular duration. Misery is not going to last forever. So that is a state we have to remember. So whenever we are depressed or downhearted, whenever you are feeling low, remember always it is only a temporary state. And again when you feel happy, when you feel too much excited about life, again know that it is only a temporary state. Don't get too excited about it. In the next moment when a small obstacle comes, we again suffer from it. Therefore, the best course of action with regard towards handling this duality is to remain unaffected by it. So whenever happiness comes, no, don't join yourself with it. Let it be. And again when misery comes, don't join yourselves with it, because both the states are temporary. So again, continuing this quotation, after a couple of lines, Swami Vivekananda, he says, what we want is neither happiness nor misery. Both make us forget our true nature. Both are chains. One iron, one gold. Behind both is the Atman, who knows neither happiness nor misery. So this is the point. This is the important point that we should remember. We should not get caught in these states, because these are the states which are oriented towards Prakriti, which are oriented towards Ahankara and Manas and so on. So Swami Vivekananda says, we want neither happiness nor misery. So we just put a big namaskaram to both this state of happiness and misery. We say that we do not want these two things. We just want to transcend this particular state wherein we experience the pure bliss, which is the Atman, which is the real nature of what we are truly. So right now we are unable to enjoy the bliss of the Atman, owing to our constant reaction to the bombardment of the three gunas in our everyday lives. We are constantly reacting to the gunas every day. We keep reacting, and therefore we do not know how to come out of it. And Swami Vivekananda, he states clearly that both are chains. So both are bondages, both happiness and misery, all the duality, they create these bondages in life. He says that one is iron and another is gold. So however this material happiness we may feel in everyday life, ultimately it is a chain after all. Ultimately it is a chain which is going to bind you down towards the plane of the body. It doesn't lead you to freedom. But when you break open the chains, when you break both the chains, you feel that you are pure beyond all these states. You experience a state of bliss which is beyond both these duality. Therefore, that we have to remember that whenever we undergo or whenever we experience all these states, we have to remember that it is temporary. Let us not join with it. Let us move beyond these states. Let us go beyond these states. Let us find out where the real bliss lies. Let us find out where the real bliss constitutes. Where bliss. Let us find out what is the real bliss in life. And again, Swami Vivekananda says, referring to the state of happiness and misery, he says, these are states and states must ever change. But the nature of the soul is bliss, which is peace and unchanging. So the nature of the soul is bliss, it is peace, it is unchanging. So that is the nature of the bliss. So we have to differentiate between the nature of bliss and the nature of the states. So if we take up the state of happiness, it is only temporary, it changes. Whereas the nature of the Atman is unchanging. And happiness and misery doesn't give you this bliss. Whereas the experience of oneself as this pure Atman or pure Purusha, it gives you this unending bliss. So this is what Swami Vivekananda says, that the nature of the soul is bliss, peace and unchanging. Again he says that these are the chains and behind both is the Atman. So this is one of the important core concepts in spiritual life that we have to understand, that we are constantly played in by the gunas. There is a constant play of gunas in our lives. So what are the gunas? The state of sattva, rajas and tamas. The state of rajas and tamas have the capacity to bind us, whereas the state of sattva can free us. So we have to understand that the spiritual practice constitutes this prolonging the nature of the sattva guna in us that leads us to freedom. And finally, we should know how to handle the dualities in life. We have to understand that these states are temporary and we have to transcend beyond this particular state, and we have to experience the pure bliss which is within us. So only when we understand the concept of the three gunas, we can understand clearly of what is happening in our lives and why do this particular crisis they occur in an individual life. For example, when we are in a crisis and when we do not know how to sort out it, and when we are in a state of doubt, confusion, during that time we have to understand, okay, there is a play of gunas which is happening and we have to remain unaffected by the gunas. So this is a big concept, this play of the gunas. We will further discuss in the next class also. And so if you have any doubts regarding this particular concept, you can discuss here. So this is one of the core concepts, again I repeat, in our Vedanta or in our Sankhya philosophy also. this play of the gunas, the three gunas, can say that the role of Prakriti they say is nothing but the three gunas, which is in a state of manifested, which is in a manifest state. So this management of the three gunas, it's one of the concepts, it's one of the big concepts which can be discussed, in further classes also. But this gives a particular, and each individual can apply this concept in our own life, and then we can determine the nature or identify some areas where we have to work out, or this completely open concept which we have to apply it, which we have to see it in our lives. See, these concepts, we just see it, how it plays in your life, and understand yourself better, and find a solution for your own life. So it gives a tool, actually. It gives this particular three gunas through our experience, or through our daily experience. We identify it, and through this learning experience, we learn more about ourselves finally. So finally, all those experiences, they bring you towards this point to know more about yourself. See, we experience all these things finally to understand who we are. So that should lead you to freedom. Finally, we understand ourselves that I am free, I am unaffected by it. So that is the concept. So we shall discuss in the next class also. So we shall finish the class here with a prayer. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Thank you. Thanks.